Tesla had a great second quarter. Andrew Kaparthy is leaving Tesla. Elon Musk in the headlines for allegedly having an affair with Google co-founder Sergey Brin's wife. And Herbert Diess leaving VW. So a lot going on right now. That's why I've brought FARZAD MESBAHI again back to the channel. And he's joining me today to go through this mess. So FARZAD, how about you just take it from here and do your introduction and we talk about these topics.
Everything is messed up. Everything's broken. Oh my goodness. I'm just kidding. Yeah, dude. Thank you again for having me on. It's been great watching your channel grow, man. I see that you've added a bunch of people to your channel and people really appreciate your content. So thank you for doing what you're doing, man. And thank you for having me back on.
Thank you for accelerating the first episode. It was great. Yeah.
I didn't do anything. It's all you, dude. This is all you. This is all you. So you want me to start with earnings or you want me to start with Diess?
Totally. We jump into earnings and then just talk through a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Earnings was great. Was super good. You know, it was one of those things where a lot of people were pessimistic going into the report. And usually, if you've been following Tesla long enough, when everybody's pessimistic, there seems to be a trend where like Tesla is like, oh no, we're fine, and they like report above where estimates are and what people were expecting them to do. So that was super positive. They really showed a lot of financial discipline in this quarter, I think, especially with Zach, the CFO, showed a great move with selling 75% of their Bitcoin that they had on hand in the second quarter, which really helped mitigate a lot of the impact that they would have gotten from the impairment charges from holding Bitcoin, since it went down from from the highs of 60s down to the low 20s, high teens. So that was a great move on their behalf, and I think it shows a certain level of maturity from a financial perspective that Tesla was always criticized for. So especially for the last, say, 3 to 4 years before the recent sort of trend of quarters where they're just generating profit like a cash cow. They're really showing this level of financial maturity that I think very few companies, especially in that industry, lack. You know, so that was a very cool thing to see. And then obviously with their ability to generate a profit with their cars and really guiding for a really strong second half of the year, still on target to go 50% year over year, even with all the difficulties they had with the Shanghai shutdown. I think that the biggest takeaway for me by far, and I think a lot of people share this as well, and others have talked about it, is that Tesla is a company with 4 factories as of at the end of Q2, one of which was shuttered or not operating for like a third to a half of the quarter. And then the other 2 were barely shipping any cars whatsoever. Yeah. So they really had 1.5 out of 4 factories operational, and they were able to generate a ton of profit, add cash to the balance sheet. And that's essentially 2 million cars worth of capacity going into the end of this year, and which is 4x the next largest, which I think is VW. I think they're expected to ship somewhere between 500,000 and maybe 1 million cars potentially. I forget exactly what their estimates are, but at least double the capacity of the next biggest competitor, and they're doing so at really, really strong margins. It's very likely that by the end of this year, Tesla's going to end probably in the low to mid 30s percentage from a gross margin perspective, which is really unprecedented for a car maker that's going to be shipping 2 to 5 million cars a year in the next couple of years, you know?
Yeah, exactly. When I saw the earnings call or heard the earnings call and went through the pages of the quarter results, I expected that from Tesla somehow, of course, because I'm a Tesla bull. But it was interesting for me also to see that the shutdowns didn't really have they had a huge impact. They would have overperformed even more if Shanghai wasn't shut down as long. And I also agree with you that it was such a good move to sell the Bitcoin, to just have more in the piggy bank. Until that point, they didn't really knew what was happening. So they had to act, and I think it was a good move. And a friend of mine texted me immediately. He was like, oh my God, wait a second. They sold Bitcoin? Well, how do you interpret that? Because he's in the crypto space and doesn't know anything about Tesla. And he was very confused. And at first, I didn't really know what was happening. And then I dug into it a little bit and I was like, Tesla has enough cash flow. They didn't really need to do that, but they secured more cash, which is always good in times of crisis, and
uncertainty.
They kept their Doge. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's the most important part, right?
The meme, the meme coin. Don't sell the meme coin. Sell the Bitcoin.
I think Gary Black put it best. Shout out Gary Black. I think Gary Black gets a lot of flack from the Tesla community, but he's so good.
Yeah, he is
so
really
good. Yeah, I disagree with a lot of what he says, but like I really respect his viewpoint
totally.
because it comes from a factual base, and I'm still allowed to disagree with where he's coming from, but at least he's got something solid to put it on. So Gary is truly the man, but I think he put it best when it came to Tesla and Elon and Zach and that leadership group, is that they are so factually based when they make their decisions that it's almost unprecedented. And this Bitcoin move, I think, proves that, is that this company, it doesn't matter how innovative the technology is or what it may be, they will always, I shouldn't say always, they are very likely to make the best move possible at any given time because all their decisions are based on fact. Every single one of them is based on fact. And that's a very good thing to have when you have a company that is transitioning into a new generation of transportation and vehicles in the next few years in a potentially recessionary environment where you're going to have a lot of companies trying to figure out what the right decision is. And if you compare this to the behavior of other companies like, say, GM or any others, we'll talk about Volkswagen, sometimes these companies, not sometimes, very often, there's this sort of corporate culture that exists that you can't really talk about the super serious stuff that's happening that could sink the company, because the incentives around those people delivering those messages makes it so that they could potentially either look like the bad guy, and then everyone else is incentivized to be like, no, that's not happening. Our company's great. Here's a data set that proves why we're great. So it's like the really hard discussions, the really hard decisions, the correct decisions, regardless of what you're facing, are super, super important. Tesla has shown now and has proven, I think, very definitively that they're capable of making the best possible decision in any circumstance. It does not seem likely to me that other companies in that space have that sort of culture and that sort of, how do I say, know-how, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they don't know how to do it. But I think that's yet another thing that came out of this period that was interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting what you've mentioned. It just falls back again onto the culture topic all the time. For me, at least, as you know, I'm very focused on that topic because it has such a huge impact on companies. And if you see how even the financial workers of Tesla, like you said, operate, it's also maybe on a different level in that sense that they also try to remove risks and bottlenecks. I think they really use their own head. They're not shy of telling something to the boss and say, okay, we got to get rid of this to improve our balance sheet there. And they really are invested in doing that. But I don't know, VW maybe has also great analysts and everything. I don't want to discredit them because we don't have insight into that. So I can't tell what's happening. But as I know Tesla from the culture perspective, and you as well working there, we can think about that Tesla is also very bottleneck focused in that sense as well.
Be less wrong. I mean, Elon has talked about this before, right? Just be less wrong. Like, this is a perfect example of that in motion. It's the perfect example of something like that being taken seriously in a financial aspect as it pertains to Bitcoin. They've shown it time and time again when it comes to the design and the manufacturing process of the cars. Be less wrong. What does be less wrong mean is, how can I get closest to the optimal solution, to the optimal answer, to the optimal process, the optimal whatever. It's the best possible thing. That's what be less wrong means. And now we can see it applied to financial decisions. We'll probably see it applied to service. We'll see it applied to energy. We'll see it applied to AI. So anything they touch, this is like the beauty of that is that is a very transferable skill set. Be less wrong is not like an engineering thing. It's not a finance thing. It's an everything thing. Even in personal life, like we're all always trying to be less wrong when it comes to caring for our children, caring for our partners, going to a restaurant. Don't go to a low-rated restaurant. I don't know, just be less wrong. It's such a very simple concept, but so powerful because it optimizes for the best possible outcome. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And I was comparing the compliance handbooks from the both companies, from VW and from Tesla, and I dug into that.
Why would you do that to yourself?
That's a good question. But I did it for my master's thesis because I have a case study comparing Tesla to VW. And it was quite recently that I really dug deep into those two
right,
things again.
That's a good excuse. We'll go with that.
We'll go with that. And what I've read was so interesting because compliance handbooks, even in different companies than VW, also in the US, I can imagine, are very law focused. They want to shield their company from mistakes from the worker, more or less, and they phrase it like, we're a big family here and everything's cool, but don't talk to the press and stuff like that, and restrictions. And of course, Tesla has a compliance thing that you have to sign off. I'm sure, but they focus on the 4 pages long anti-handbook and the compliance handbook of VW. It's so funny because they also have notes at the end that you can write stuff down, and it's like a 50-page long thing, and it's you have to go through that with HR for maybe a week or something. They signal their workers so much. If you think you can improve something, talk to your boss. Don't talk a hierarchy higher than that. And it's more or less, please stay in your lane, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. It's all over the compliance handbook. And I think be less wrong, like you said, these small things, these simple principles really help to unlock your brain almost, because if you are restricted all the time, even think of Elon Musk walking into the office and saying, how about we buy Bitcoin? But the financial guys really consider that and look at that, and maybe it wasn't even Elon Musk's idea. It could be in the first place. VW would never buy Bitcoin. Why would they? It's too risky. Why would they step into that segment? Why? Because they lack the imagination, and that's very interesting also. In the first place, it's not, Tesla sold the Bitcoin. It's more, you have to think about why they even bought them in the first place. So this is already a huge thing that they did that as an institution, a bigger institution. And they still are in that topic. Crypto ties so much into also the energy sector, because if you generate power on your roof, especially in the US, because many people are more or less homeowners, in Europe it's a different story because everything is already sold out and we don't have space anymore. So not everybody has a home like that. But you generate your energy, you save that in your power wall, and if you need to get rid of the energy, you can mine Bitcoin, for example. That's just a scenario I can think of. And they don't own the crypto for no reason. I think they have plans with crypto one day, and we will 100%. See that in maybe 10 years or something. It's far away, I think, still. Because of the energy crisis, because nobody wants to generate Bitcoin anymore now, because now the prices are so high. So it doesn't make sense right now to waste it on that. You could charge your car, for example. So there are other use cases that are more practical. But
what's interesting about that, it's very reactive to current market demands, right? It's almost like it's the freest form of a free market in that respect. It's like, okay, well, it got to a point where Bitcoin mining is too expensive. This energy is better used somewhere else. Cool. That sounds pretty efficient. Like maybe we shouldn't mine Bitcoin right now, So even in that respect, it kind of opens up a window into seeing okay, well, it sucks for the person who's holding Bitcoin because I have some Bitcoin and it more than halved since I've had it. But it's cool seeing the mechanism of what it means to be in a marketplace where we can exchange value freely. We can be like, you know what, this doesn't make sense anymore. I'm going to go this route now. It's interesting to watch. It really does show how there's a lot of potential for the technology long term, and the fact that Tesla was able to sell 75% of its holdings, and since they did that, the price hasn't really moved much for Bitcoin. That's a good sign. That's a good sign for me that says okay, Bitcoin is not at a point where it's it's not a reserve currency, and it's not an inflation hedge, and it's not necessarily even a currency, but at least it's acting in a logical manner, and it's acting in a strong, like one of the largest corporate holders of Bitcoin out there decided to get rid of 75% of its holdings for Bitcoin, and the coin's okay. Like it hasn't really, maybe went down a little bit, but nothing tremendously bad has happened. That shows that there is a lot of underlying value for that specific tool, for that specific thing. And 100% agree with you that Tesla definitely has long-term, maybe not Bitcoin specifically, but like in the space.
I mean, crypto in general,
space. Yeah, in that space. So yeah, it's very interesting to watch. And again, it's the culture aspect of it that Tesla has that allows them to, like you said, to get into that space in the first place. It's like they're not really trying to prevent themselves from doing something just because it's either taboo or, oh, that sounds too risky, I'm not going to deal with that. No, it's like, that sounds great. Let's get into it. Let's go after it. Let's try it out. It's great.
So interesting that even the possibility that your high performance computer standing in your garage could mine while you, I mean, it adds just value to the car. That's really crazy. Yeah.
What's interesting, like my wife and I were talking about this, that there's a trend. There really has been a trend in the last few years towards unlocking the value of stationary assets that exist in the world. Airbnb is one. Uber is another one. Then we just found out about this service here in Austin. I don't know if it's somewhere else, where you can rent out your pool for the day and people can come use your pool. That's unlocking an asset that you don't have. That you know what I'm saying? Like there's another one where you can rent out your kitchen for people to come in and cook if they want. Like there's all these things starting to come up, that allow you to unlock the value of assets. So a parked car with a computer inside in a world where mining actually brings value and actually is a way to leverage an asset that's just sitting there. It's great. Full self-driving is another one. You're unlocking value from a stationary asset that's not generating any income while it's sitting there.
Exactly.
And it really does seem like we're going towards that. So then my brain goes to, okay, what are the things, like how many units of value from an asset perspective, like how many units of assets have been created in the last, say, 20 years that could be used by somebody to take advantage of the value they provide, but they've been sitting idle for the last 20 years. And then what percentage of idleness is there out there in the world for these assets? And my gut tells me it's like 90%. So like 90% of the crap we've made is just sitting there and nobody's using it, at any given point, maybe even higher. That's a ginormous inefficiency in the system. So then how do we think about sort of leveraging those? Anyway, I'm kind of going off a tangent, but like that Bitcoin thing sort of reminded me of that. And that's where we're going as a trend. And Tesla is the company that's looking to really leverage those things, I think, at least within the transportation space and having a computer in the car and whatnot.
Yeah, it really ties into that topic. That your points were very interesting, very, very interesting, because you think nothing can be improved because we are so peak improvement. We think all the time, or I realize that, especially in the mobile phone space or something. But there are so many things, like you said, Airbnb is a good example, and renting out your pool and all these hard assets that cannot move. What do you do with them? Because how many times a week do you use your pool, really? And how many times is your car sitting around and doing nothing? So yeah, there is a lot of potential there. Especially in times where maybe some people can't afford a pool, but they want to rent one day, for example, and it's low cost. And it's good that the private sector, the people, have more revenue streams, especially.
Yeah, exactly. That's the important aspect, is the people. Like, how can we allow the people?
The empowerment of people, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's about the Bitcoin topic and Tesla. Maybe we can go on to different topics. Maybe we can brush over this, this misinformation campaign again, or something from the Wall Street Journal. Elon Musk, the Playboy, did something wrong after the quarter, after the earnings. Perfect timing again to put pressure on the stock or something.
The Playboy who has come out and openly said on Twitter that he hasn't gotten laid in ages.
Yeah.
Why? Who looks like literally a ghost without a shirt on. Yeah. No hate, Elon. I love you. please get some sun, bro. Like, you're sexy. I get it. You're super smart. You're a great guy. You're doing great things. Please get some vitamin D. It's healthy. Just get some sun. A little bit of sun. A little bit of sun. Yeah, man. I don't know. It's wild. So here's what's really becoming clear to me. I think this is something that I think the people have felt. When I say the people, it's like, I'm going to use the United States as an example because we have a very unique media landscape here. Is that and it kind of started with Trump a little bit. You know, love him or hate him, whatever. There is this whole fake news thing that was around this guy. You know, I'm not a fan of Trump, but it's an interesting dynamic that arised that I think he was instrumental in bringing light to. Is that there is a some sort of incentive in the at least I'm going to say the U.S. media landscape to leverage storylines and leverage things and people that exist in culture that would generate a lot of views and lean really hard into that. Forget integrity. Forget it's tabloid. It's really just a tabloid style pushing information to people, right? Fake news, disinformation, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But what's becoming really, really clear here is that the United States, I'm going to say for the United States, at least because that's the one I'm familiar with, the incentives to report truth do not exist. There's no incentives to report truth because everything here, right or wrong, is for profit. And these things, these news outlets that exist, really they have to generate money to exist. And in a landscape where you have the internet and you have more independent voices such as yourself, such as me, such as other people on YouTube, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, that are becoming more and more influential when it comes to public discourse and debate and even news in some respect, that those eyes are leaving these institutions and these outlets that are out there that have been out there for the last few decades, being really the truth tellers, the people that have been passing on information. And now that you live in a landscape, again, where all that viewership is gone, you need to, as a business, you just have to survive. So how do you survive? You leverage human psychology by saying, oh, look at what this crazy guy did. You know, Elon Musk, richest guy in the world. The dude is offering horses for, sexual
Massages.
pleasure.
Exactly.
Is cheating on one of his best friends with his ex-wife. Blah blah blah. And then Elon comes on and is like, "This is freaking crazy. Here's a picture of me and Sergey literally yesterday, and the story's still up. It's mind blowing." So let me wrap up my point here. I think what's been eye-opening for me is that just being associated with the Tesla and Elon world and SpaceX, whatever you want to call it, has really opened my eyes to how much bias and propaganda, in a sense, exists in this world, especially from these institutions. And I even felt this too when I was following, so back in 2019, 2020, the US presidential election, I was really drawn to a person called Andrew Yang, who was running on the Democratic side.
I was also Yang Gang from here. I was like, Yang Gang.
Dude, like he made a lot of sense. He was logical. He came from the correct background. I didn't agree with him on everything. Some of his ideas I would have challenged. Even the UBI thing, I really loved the idea, but let's talk about the execution, or how do we actually make it happen? But it was an honest effort. You could tell it was an honest effort to try and make humanity better and to make the country stronger and to make it more inclusive and just more powerful and everything, all the positives to it. And it was an honest take on that. And then I saw this media landscape just completely ignore the guy on purpose, or
really.
Start generating hit pieces, and that drove me nuts. So I saw that happen. And then that was after the whole FUD craziness of 2017, 2018, 2019 with Elon and the company going bankrupt and hit piece after hit piece. And now again with Elon being the richest person in the world, with a company that's about to dominate the auto industry and the oil industry, you again see these hit pieces coming up like crazy towards the guy. So at this point, I can't help but feel like everything's corrupt, man. Like it's very frustrating to watch. It's really, really frustrating to watch. And this Wall Street Journal thing that has come out now, it's like, for me, it's like mind blowing because it's just an outright lie that they're putting out there, and they're not taking down for the sake of generating clicks only. And who knows? And the worst case scenario is that they actually have a premeditated effort to try and hurt Elon or hurt his reputation so that it hurts his company's survivals and his missions. So that is the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is that we have a media system that does not incentivize for truth and incentivizes for clicks. And what do people like to read? They like to read salacious headlines. They like negative the drama. News. They like negative news. They like fear. So like both situations are total crap. And I can't decide which one's worse. You know, I think trying to ruin a guy's career is worse, but the best case scenario is still super broken because you're not actually passing the truth onto the people. You're just hanging on to, like, you're trying to leverage the worst of human psychology. I'm getting off my soapbox now, but it's very frustrating, man. Yeah. It's super frustrating. It has me feeling kind of pessimistic, to be honest.
You said that that's in the US space for you because you know the US media space, but don't mistake that stuff swaps over to Europe all the time. For example, Elon Musk isn't seen very good here as well, especially because he's a billionaire, for example. People have huge problems because we're very socialist also here, especially in the university. Young people always are very against like everything, but don't really look at the details and stuff like that. And also with the news that he will reinstate Donald Trump was in the news here. And I was like, what? He never said that. I mean, his response was 7 minutes long when he was interviewed by the All In podcast.
Well, he did say that he would lift the ban, right? But it's not just a Trump thing. It's everybody.
Yeah, what he meant was he wouldn't kick somebody off the platform for that, what he did, but he will block them temporarily for that time that the pressure gets off. Okay, that's the thing. And he is a free speech absolutist, which is important and to know that. And he's a centrist. That's also very important to know. More on the right-leaning side right now.
I don't even know if he's necessarily right-leaning, to be honest. I think he's just logical. Like this right-left thing to me is like, it's such a, like, in my opinion, is an incorrect way of looking at it. It's just like, what is logical? What is illogical? You know, if something is logical, who cares where it falls? It's just logical.
For me, as a European, it's very puzzling to see the split into left or right. It's not like that. We have a multi-party system where we have parties in the middle, also more centrist-leaning parties, for example. That's why it always startles me when I see that in America it's so like binary. It's like left or right, and
yet half the country is independent, which is crazy.
Right means you're near the Tea Party almost, or the KKK. You could be associated with them, or from the left you're a Marxist. It's that's not how it works, and sometimes you need more left-leaning solutions. Or sometimes you need more conservative solutions, for example. And it also depends on your status. Are you married? Do you have kids or not? Are you young or not? If you're young, you want, of course, you don't have money. You say, tax the rich, tax the rich. But when you get some, then you're like, I don't really want to be taxed. And I
don't know where my money's going. Why should I get taxed like crazy?
Why should I?
I don't trust the government. Like,
exactly.
Are they going to know to spend my money right? Like, come on. Like, it's crazy. Like, I tell you a story for that real quick. Like, I was literally in both. Like, now we're we're financially independent, my wife and I. We're extremely lucky, okay? Before that, for like a huge majority of my life, growing up, whatever you want to call it, we did not have plenty. We had to, sometimes we had to survive, bro. Like, it was hard.
Especially
was really,
in the US, it's hard.
It's super hard. You know, we don't have great safety nets. You know, it's like you just have to kind of make it happen. But I think that's the beauty behind the countries. Like those that really try and make it happen, they get rewarded financially and with whatever else they want to go after, you know? So I've seen both. I understand both use cases. My whole thing is just be logical about where you are in your life. Don't just spew something out there because you feel like you deserve that for whatever reason. Like, you have to sit down and really think about, okay, with me saying these words, what does it mean for the population at large? And is this just a thing I'm saying because I'm pissed off about the world and I'm pissed off about my situation, you know? But I think that also speaks to the fact that there's a lot of people that are out there that are pissed off. So we need to figure out, why are you pissed off? Like, why are you pissed off that you have to come out and say, you know, tax no billionaires, tax all the rich, unions everywhere, you know, like all these ideas that people are having on the left-leaning side. But I'm sure it comes from a place of pain. It comes from a place of something's wrong. something's wrong that you're saying these things. So let's sit down and like figure out what's wrong. Let's actually spend hours talking and say what is wrong instead of soundbite after soundbite and just really digging into their fear and their hate and their really harsh situation. And that's what we have now. It's the media. That's what they're levered. That's what they're going after.
And especially big problems are not easy to discuss even. You cannot put it into black and white or left or right and up and down or what. It's too complicated. You have to look at it from different angles. And what I also see, for example, those algorithms, they also emphasize that if you look into it a little bit and you realize, hey, it works so good to trigger people to post stuff also. That's what they want. They want clicks. So Facebook doesn't hire like thousands of psychologists for no reason. There's a reason behind that, because they want to push engagement all the time, and that Google does the same thing. And not even that, the media also uses that. Oh, fear, we can get clicks out of that. We can earn our money because our business is so chaotic right now. We got to make money. How do we do that? Spill some fear into the population, and that will help. But what I wanted to touch on is that also goes into the sector. For example, when workers at VW read stuff like that, they are also scared, or they're like, okay, what can I do? That's forbidden, that's forbidden, that's forbidden. And then they start to resign inside, inner resignation to just don't do anything. And we see that in Germany very much. It's not like you can do what you want to get rid of problems. And we incentivize that. We like that, to get rid of bottlenecks, but you have the responsibility. And in Germany, it's like, I'm very restricted in my life. So do I really want to have the responsibility as well? No.
Let me ask you a question. Yeah. How many, like gut feel, what percentage of the German population is fulfilled?
That's hard to say. You can look at happiness statistics. Swiss is the happiest country.
Forget those stats, gut feel, like what you actually experience. Like forget any number you've seen on the internet. Like go out there and think about the people that you talk to, like your circle. Try to like bias it, so to try and bias for your circle a little bit. What percentage of the people in Germany are fulfilled?
Oh, that's hard.
And if you don't know, you don't know. That's
I know it's more or less like no one, more or less. It's very hard because because really, because Germans are very stubborn and very like rule focused, and they hate that they live in restriction, but at the same time they point it out when they see another person doing mistakes, for example. So they live in that system. It's always like masochistic self-harm thing. I don't know. The Germans are very special. They don't really get so excited. They are like suppressed almost. It's crazy. It's I wouldn't say that everybody's happy, because they always complain about everything all the time. Even if they have a good life, they will complain about something. And Germans really can get angry. They like to get angry somehow. I would describe it that way. It's very interesting. Many people want to have a modest life. It's more like, I don't want to be the star in the group. I want to be equal, very normalized. Don't stick my head out too much, and have my good, modest life. It's more or less that way. And that also ties into the pioneer spirit that the Americans have. Like, let's do it. Let's do something. Let's go. I mean, the rules that are in place are more or less free in America. You really see that, or they're more risk averse. For example, they take risks more. They also have more dangers in the States, I think, that way, because many things aren't secured. Actually, like for example, if you lose your job, you lose your job.
There's unemployment.
But not in the sense like in Germany. Great. Some people really think about, I earn more if I get unemployment checks than working. So
that's not.
Yeah, good. That's crazy. The system is also messed up. I have to change the subject now,
because we'll go real deep in that one.
We're very deep into that one. But Yeah, but it's interesting. It's a culture thing. It's how the companies also operate that way, because VW operates in that system that I've just mentioned, and in the modesty and in the where people resign inside. That also ties into the problems VW, for example, has. Unlock the brains, just unlock the brains, and don't put a compliance handbook and say, don't do anything until like a robot. Just be a robot. That's what we want. And I think that's pretty stupid. And we also saw that with Herbert Diess, for example. He stepped out of line. We know that. He stepped out of line. He said, no, that's a problem. We may have to let go 20,000 people in 2030 if we keep that pace that we are doing. Now look at that. Guess who really doesn't like that? At VW in the board, we have the union council as well. And if Herbert Diess says, get rid of 20,000 workers, and the union council sits in the board and they're like, oh boy. But the problem with that is, if the market demands, because the market changes so much, processes get simplified, you don't need as many workers. And that's a huge deal in Germany, because the state even says, no, you can't fire 20,000 people. We don't do that in Germany. And what do you do?
I love how you made your German accent even stronger there.
It is like that's the typical German.
That was good. That was really good.
Yeah.
I got to give you props for that.
And you see what I mean, that this is really a huge problem. And Tesla is criticized for letting go of workers, but they operate leaner. That's why Tesla would never risen to that size in Germany. Never, ever. Not in that system. It's a smart move that they made a factory in Germany, that they open up Gigafactory in Berlin. I've talked about it many times, about the quality control, and the German engineers are superb.
They're ramping well. And they seem to be getting a really good product out there. I have a lot of questions for you, around that VW thing. But I want to say something before I forget.
Please.
So just for a second on the fulfillment thing, I just thought of an idea. I think it would be super, super cool if people from around the world that have YouTube channels go to their local downtown area and then just randomly sample like 200 people and say, hey, can I ask you a quick question? You can be on camera, I'll have your audio. And just ask a yes or no question. Do you feel fulfilled? Yeah. And that's it. I would love to get a real data set from all the parts of the world where people can say, are they fulfilled, yes or no? Anyway, I just want to put it out there in case anybody's interested in doing that has a platform. Okay. Yeah. Because I think I'm going to do that here in Austin, and anywhere I go for travel, I think I'm going to just record hey, are you comfortable saying? Anyway. Yeah, I just think that's a very interesting data set. For the VW Diess thing. So question I have for you. Are you surprised by the decision?
No. I was anticipating that very long, actually. I was thinking about that very long ago, because you don't step out of line in Germany, especially not at VW. It's like a military structured, like we already talked about that in the first interviews we did, like a military-like structured, very conservative structured, hierarchical thing. It's always like a political system where you have so many players in the board that it's ridiculous almost. I have a list here, the Volkswagen Group CEO turnover. 1982 till 1993, Hahn was the CEO, 11 years. Then 1993 till 2002, Piech was 9 years. He was one member of the Porsche Piech family, so that's important maybe. 2002 until 2006 is Piechitz-Rieder, 4 years. 2007 till 2015, Winterkorn was for 8 years. And 2015 till 2018, Müller, 2.5 years. And then 2018 till 2022, Diess, 4 years. And the Tesla CEO turnover, 2003 till present, Elon Musk, 19 years. You get the point that I want to make here?
Yeah. I think what's interesting there, though, is I think that's what you mentioned on VW, that's way more common than Elon. The situation with Elon, that's way more like owner-operator style, where it's like an entrepreneur who's got like a business, and he's been there for a really long time and it's his, and Elon just happens to be really good at operating in that. But what you mentioned with VW, that seems to be more the norm than anything, where you do have quite a bit of turnover in the executive suite in a lot of these companies, mainly because these executives are not really owner-operators. They're just brought in by the board to do what the board wants them to do. And then, and then after a while, they're like, you're not doing that good of a job. Here's your salary for the next 5 years. Just goodbye, go retire. It's like, okay, cool.
Yeah, and I wanted to add something there, which is very important. In the, I think, 70s, Japan started to export cars like crazy, Toyota, for example. And you as an American know that Toyota took market share, and a huge market share in America.
From GM, Ford.
Guess where
Chrysler.
they don't took a lot of market share? Not in Germany. We don't do that. Yes, because VW was successful with that. They shielded their market with their quality. In the 70s, 80s, 90s, they really did a great job protecting the market and everything was fine. But now the market is changing so fast and so differently. It even goes down to the budget cycles. I mean, they have 5 to 8 years budget cycles, and that should tell you something, because budget cycles are, okay, we have this model that costs this much, we have this and that budget, for example. And I've talked about that with Joe Justice in detail. Scrum wants budget cycles to be reduced. Like if you want to improve agility, you want the budget cycles to go really short. And Tesla does 3 part changes a day, for example. They can do in one day 3 part changes, or in 3 months, 1 part change or stuff like that. It differs so much. And that's also because they have the budget at hand. Like really, the budget cycles are very, very compressed. That's what you see, the whole organization. They meet, they have their 5-year plans and stuff like that, and their waterfall model or something, like very old school stuff, I think. That's what you see. And then suddenly the Workers' Council, for example, says just what you want to get rid of 20,000 people. He just talks about that because this is a potential if they don't reach their goals. And that's important to know. Nothing is secure, but not in Germany, apparently. They say, even if they don't sell cars, we pay for your salary, no problem. No, it is a huge problem. The system will collapse and VW will collapse. It's crazy. I think it's so bad they got rid of these. Time will tell. Now they have a person, Blume, he is for
E-fuels.
E-fuels, yeah, exactly, for e-fuels.
Which I don't even know what that means. Like, what is, like, I asked somebody before.
Yeah, synthetic. It's like synthetic oil. I don't know what the oil industry thinks. Maybe they have a breakthrough or something, but this doesn't sound like e-mobility for me. Blume was very vocal about e-fuels and very, really liked the idea and wanted to push that. But what do they want to do? Just shift again? Are they this agile?
There's somebody that came on one of my live streams. His name was Matt, if I remember correctly. He's from Germany as well. And he talked about how Blume had a lot of... well, at first, somebody in the comments helped me pronounce Blume, not Bloom. It was Blume.
Blume. Yeah.
Like Porsche, right? Kind of like similar to that. So he seemed to have very close ties and relationships with the government of Germany, especially along this line of e-fuels. And I don't know, forget exactly, but maybe he was part of like ensuring that incentives were created for e-fuels for the industry. And knowing Blume, he oversees Porsche, which is the really the performance division of Volkswagen, if you really think about it. I'm personally a huge Porsche fan. I love Porsches. I really do. I think they're beautiful cars, super well built, just great performance machines. The Taycan, I think, is a phenomenally good EV for what it does. I really do. But from my outsider's perspective of what's going on with Volkswagen right now, my biggest concern, so by far my biggest concern, and I've had a few more days to think about this, and if you take Germany's situation from a macro lens right now, and do correct me if I'm wrong at any point, because you obviously live there and you know this stuff way better than I would. It seems like Germany is in for tough times in the coming couple of years because of the whole Ukraine-Russia thing that's going on, and Germany's reliance on Russian oil. Okay, so that's number one. So there's a big energy crisis. Right? There's a huge energy crisis that's about to show its head, especially in the winter, because more likely than not, Putin's going to pull a fast one, and then Germany's probably going to be in a world of hurt when it comes to having enough fuel to power the country. So that's number one. So, and we all know civilizations run on fuel and energy. Energy is the base layer need for any civilization, country, people to exist in the current world. If you don't have energy, you are so screwed. Okay, so that's number one. So within that context, we know that Germany as a country is going to be potentially suffering quite a bit, and it's going to introduce a lot of complexities when it comes to operating your country, even just driving cars around with fuel. I don't know how Germany gets their fuel. I mean, they get it from Russia, but I'm sure there's other ways they get it. But you have a lot of dependence on that thing. Now you layer on top of that, one of their, from my understanding, especially with talking to you, Volkswagen Group is one of the biggest employers of that country. They hire a lot of people, and it's the pride and joy of Germany from an automotive perspective. It seems like, I know Germany has a bunch of different brands, Mercedes, BMW, and so on and so forth, but my understanding is that Volkswagen has by far the most volume of product that comes out, which means they'll probably have the most suppliers, which means that they'll probably need the most people.
40,000. So 40,000 suppliers,
40,000 suppliers. Do you know how many people Volkswagen employs?
Not directly, no. I'm not sure about the number, but
I'm going to do a quick Google search here. Go ahead.
A huge portion of our economy, the small and medium enterprises in Germany are working for the car industry, especially, or for bigger engineering corporations, for example, as a supplier. This is very important. If VW has problems, then these small and medium enterprises have problems until Tesla, for example, steps in and just swoops up all the suppliers, for example. Because I think many suppliers are also like mad. It's a love-hate relationship, more or less, because the German automotive companies use price pressure to pressure them down, because it's a supplier network, and they say, oh, we go to the next supplier if you don't supply for our margins that we want. And for example, then they make the negative stamping press, for example. They build that for VW, and then VW says, if they don't even work with them, they say, this is our IP. Or intellectual property, give it to us, we just take it. And because they can't use it anymore, because it's intellectual property, stuff like that. And so some suppliers are very happy that Tesla is in the country.
That's great.
So that means I think we can have a shift. I mean, if Tesla wants to produce 20 million cars a year to 2030, then they need suppliers, and these suppliers are very great specialized suppliers are in Germany, hidden champions.
I think they'll probably take a fair percentage of those if that was to come to fruition. I think maybe like 20% of the 40,000 survive in that scenario, to be honest. I don't think it's going to be all of them, because Tesla likes to be vertically integrated. Remember that, and they're all for removing parts and everything. So that's one risk that those suppliers have. But back to my original point. So Volkswagen employs 120,000 people directly in Germany alone. 120,000 people. And then layer in the suppliers and everything like that, it's probably well over 500,000 people. So you have 500,000 people now, at least, that are tied to this enterprise with Blume on deck, which, in my opinion, is going to be a lot less willing to push as hard as Diess did from like the fire that's needed to transition to EVs, because he's going to look and be like, oh, I see what happened to this guy. I'm not going to be nearly as vocal or as pushy about this. I'm not going to invite Elon to talk to leadership, because I'm going to get let go by the board, and the German public and the German media are going to punish me, because that's viewed as anti-German, and that's not good. Right. So right there, you already have a forcing function towards Volkswagen to run as normal, or as not lean as heavily into what's needed to survive this transition. So under that scenario, and then you layer in the additional thing is that Blume heads the division of Volkswagen that is not mass market. These guys are specialized vehicle makers. You know, the 911, the Panamera, the Cayenne, all these cars, they're not going to be shipping 20 million Porsches a year. They're going to be shipping, I don't know, 1 million Porsches a year, 1.5 million Porsches a year.
With high margins, yes.
Yeah, with high margins. I don't know how you transition that into the EV space, especially when you have a legacy system that is built in a way that is really dependent on that supplier network, and it's really dependent on the repair network, and you have all these layers layered into that. So I'm not so sure that Blume, and again, he very well could prove me wrong, but it's odd that they tap that talent. So what that tells me is that Volkswagen is looking, in my opinion, I think their plan is to do something similar to what Ford is doing, which is to heavily specialize on the cars you're going to be making here in the next 5 to 10 years and transitioning those to EVs. So what's Ford doing right now? F-150 Lightning, Mustang Mach-E, and then I think like a work van or something. I forget what it is. Like these are they're gonna build 3 cars. That's basically all they're gonna build because they understand that having 50 to 60 models in this transition is impossible. It is not going to work. It is not going to work. So what's going to happen to Volkswagen then under this scenario? They're going to go from building 10 million cars a year to 2 million cars a year to 2 million cars a year. So I think what's going to end up happening here is that Volkswagen might survive. They might do well, like within their niche of whatever that is, but it's not going to be 120,000 people employed in Germany. It's going to be 20,000 people employed in Germany. And then you layer that within the context of what we just talked about, the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and how that's going to impact Germany's capability of just operating as a civilization. And then you're going to add the shock of a bunch of people potentially losing their jobs. That seems like a kind of a disaster to me. One of your biggest employers starts laying off a ton of workers or letting go of a bunch of people because they literally cannot transition properly, and then the entire country is in shambles because of what's going on with energy. Now, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm wrong, because this is me talking about it from an outsider's perspective. So I'd love some rebuttals if you have them.
Okay, first to the energy crisis. Yes, this is a huge problem, and the problem is not really oil. It is a problem. Oil is also a problem. Gas is the problem. Gas.
Got it.
Yeah, the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. That's a problem. They built the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, but they scrapped the plans to build the pipeline because of the invasion of Ukraine from Russia. Okay, they had diplomatic ties to Russia in the past to even out the nooks and crannies and be very political, nice to each other, get together a little bit more, because it's crucial for Germany also to have good relationships to Russia, because we are in the middle of the big nations, America and Russia. Still, you feel that there are still tensions. Or for example, Huawei was a problem that America said, don't use Huawei, and like we said, but we don't have 5G technology, problematic. And stuff like that. So geopolitical, Germany is a very strategic point also for the American politics, for example, or the Russian politics, for example. So this is a playing field all the time that has tensions, just as a background. And then we are reliant on Russia. It was a really stupid idea, because you could already see expandatory behavior from Russia with the
annexation of Crimea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yes, this is a problem, and Tesla will also suffer from that if the gas was just shut down for a few days are enough.
Sure.
Also, glass production will have a huge problem, and glass production needs to go into car windows and stuff like that. So it's a huge deal if gas is shut down, and we are very reliant. I think like more than 60 or 70% of our gas is from that Nord Stream 1 pipeline or something like that, more than half. What's also very interesting was that like we have containers, liquid gas to save gas for bad times, and we fill our supplies every year, fill them up. Funny enough, they weren't filled before the Ukraine war somehow. I don't know what was happening there, but this was going through the news a few weeks ago or a few days ago. And stuff like that really has an impact on the economy, and energy is a huge deal. And now everybody says like, yeah, damn, had we invested more in the renewable energy more? So we are very late to the party. And now we are talking about coal, to get our coal plants back on and even mine coal again and stuff like that. And yeah, that's very dirty technology. but yeah, we still have coal supplies, and we will use those coal supplies. And everybody says nuclear energy, ramp that up again, and ramp everything up. It doesn't matter how dirty or polluted that is. And right now we have a Green Party in the government right now, and they say, get the coal running. Let's do it. Yeah, it's crazy. And people don't like that.
Tells you how dire the situation is.
Yeah, and we have huge tensions inside of Germany. For example, the Fridays for Future protests that we had are huge here. It's a huge deal. The young populations really want renewables and really hate that we... But the problem is, the economy is the economy. If you break the economy, then everything breaks. It's not an option. It's not an option to stop. And that's a huge problem. So yes, FARZAD, it is a huge problem that we are so reliant on Russia with gas, and this will unfold the next time. And if the tensions rises with the NATO and stuff like that, that's why we need a diplomatic solution, because we are so dependent with the gas. It really works. It really works. We are financing the war right now because we pay Russia every day, and we have contracts. That's also very important to know. Russia delivers their gas based on the contract. If Germany says, no, we don't want to take your gas anymore, then they say, great, I'm going to sue you. Great. And they have to pay eventually. So we still have to pay. We can't go out of this contract. It's not possible. Amazing. There are contracts in place. It's not as simple as just, yes, we show those Russians. So Putin knows that. So he's just playing chess there. And it works. Yeah. It really works. And we are stupid because we made us reliant on Russia.
The big question becomes then, is Germany able to rescue something like a Volkswagen if it was really going to get to the point where they're going to have a hell of a time transitioning to EVs while all of this is going on in the next few years? Because this is not going to stop. I mean, I don't see this really going anywhere for the next few years.
Yeah, me too. And I'm not really sure if that works, because then you have to think about one other aspect, and that is we have suppliers for the internal combustion engine still, many of them, because the VW Group builds 10 million cars a year, similar to Toyota, for example, and most of them, like 95% or more, or 98% are internal combustion engines. And guess what is happening? If you tell a supplier, we're going to transition to EVs, but that's why we can't work with you anymore. But can you supply this part 10 years for service? We need that for service. Can you supply that? No, we're going to go out of business if you leave us now with the production, and we won't produce your part. And guess what's happening? How long will those internal combustion engines flow around if there are no parts, no spare parts anymore? That's a huge problem. This reason alone could implode the whole system. Damn, and this small service thing. And that's something many people don't really realize. I think there are very dark times ahead, like you said, with that. And and I don't really know if Blume can just shift, because Tesla is ramping up like crazy still. We see that, and the demand doesn't stop. And people know Tesla now, and they compare their cars, and they look at the software especially. And CARIAD, the software company from VW, has so many problems. It's ridiculous. And especially me as a designer, I always look at the interface and it grinds my gears. And
You know what? The software thing is a microcosm, I think, of why legacy automakers are incapable of moving fast enough.
Yeah, exactly.
So the one CEO that was super adamant about moving our manufacturing as fast as humanly possible in Diess, and he was saying the right things and doing the right things, releases and mass all these cars, ID3s, ID4s, whatever else that they have in their lineups, Taycan, so on and so forth. And then what is a huge problem that they have right now? Software. It's software. Why is it taking so long to fix? Why is it taking so long to fix? Where are the patches? Where are the over-the-air updates? Where are the improvements? Where's the talent that can help them get there? It doesn't exist, or it's not really capable of coming to fruition fully, because there's a certain culture and there's a certain change aspect that has to happen where people are capable of really absorbing that change, and there has to be a push towards that. So this is a perfect example as to why moving so fast is so damn hard. Is you can do the things that you want to do to get to a certain level, but all the pieces have to work. All the pieces have to work. Now, let's be fair. In Tesla's example, the biggest bottleneck they have is service. We all know this. The service network, it's good. I would say it's good. It's not great. I would say it's good. I wouldn't say it's bad. It's good. But it's one of their perceived weaknesses in relation to everything else they do, but it's because of scale. But at least the product is nailed. At least the product is nailed. The reliability is nailed, I would argue. I've owned, 3 Teslas now since I purchased the Teslas. All 3 of them have been way more reliable than any gas car I've ever owned. So that in itself tells me that they've nailed that. But yeah, it's a microcosm of why moving fast is so hard. And I'm curious to see here in the next couple years with Volkswagen's new direction under Blume, which I'm super excited to see actually what it is. And I'm hopeful that he's going to do a great job. He's going to take over September 1st. I'm hopeful that he's going to do a great job. But man, it's going to be fascinating to see how all those things roll out. And I'm curious to see how the rest of the leadership at Volkswagen Group changes under his leadership as well. Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's important to note that Porsche is an outlier inside of VW. They are owned by VW Group, but they still operate very independently. Their teams are special. They don't use the MEB platform, for example. They use their own platform. They have their own battery management system. They're very independent. That's why the car is also so different from the rest of the VW cars, for example. On paper, it makes totally sense that Blume tries to adapt the Porsche system onto the whole VW Group. But the problem is that it's a huge mess. CARIAD, for example, they have over like 1,000 programmers. What the hell is happening there? They have problems with their software. They have version 1, and now they come out with version 2. Version 2 and version 1 are not compatible. That means if you have a car that has version 1, you will never upgrade to version 2. And that in itself is a catastrophe. It's crazy. And stuff like that is happening. So
makes no sense.
I mean, I have to say that it was strange that even under Diess's management, like, because his hands are tied. I mean, the CEO of VW has no say, more or less. It's not like the American companies where the CEO really can pressure down. The Americans have this principle of united we stand, divided we fall, but they are very egalitarian as well. So they like to have group decisions, but if the boss says, we're going to do it like that, we're going to do it like that eventually, because the boss says, united we stand, divided we fall. We got to decide. Let's do it. Let's move. And that's because America is an immigrant state, very young country, very low context country, where the context doesn't matter. It's very precise language, and they have a hands-on approach. They show people this is the process that you have to test this process, train this process, and then you know.
In the best case scenario.
Yeah, in the best case scenario. But in Germany, we are more like theoretical. It's more or less the first principle approach, also like Elon Musk does, but sometimes it's very hard, and we have to complicated concepts to understand before we sit down and really do something. And that's why we decide so long.
You have to develop a process and steps for just being imaginative and trying to just be like free flowing. Like the German culture is almost like, well, no, we have to figure out how to create a process for this.
Yeah,
we have
exactly.
to sit down and figure out how to, so it's repeatable. But like sometimes
iteration. It's iteration.
Yeah,
iteration is the and design thinking is also a principle that's not founded in Germany. It's like design thinking processes are from Silicon Valley, more or less, or used heavily by Silicon Valley. And that's also a thing. Like the software approach, the software mindset, this Silicon Valley mindset that helped develop all the software from the US. I mean, they are leading in that space, and not Germany. I can tell you that.
The one thing that's super interesting to me, though, is that I feel like the more I think about it, that process of like innovation and iteration and figuring it out, I'm more and more convinced that is an art. It's an art.
Yeah.
It's almost like engineering by trial and error, or engineering by thinking of new ideas and implementing new things. I don't think you can come up with a process. I don't think you can sit down and actually try and figure out how to make it repeatable. I really do think there is a variable of art to it that makes it so unique.
There is a process to that, but it's the iterative process. It's like iteration. And
but different people require different environments to come up with the ideas that get implemented, and then you iterate. Like that is the key component that's missing there, is that the inception of the idea, the inception of the new process or the thing.
It's a more creative process,
Very creative. And I think it oftentimes gets discounted. I think problem solving and that creativity of coming up with solutions, it's way more art than science. And
I know what it means.
And like putting steps and processes to that, I think removes the capability. It's almost like the standardization of the school system in the United States. Like that's the best parallel I can draw. Like right now, the U.S. education system is 60 years old, and it maybe even longer, and it's designed to create drones, people that just follow directions in factories. And so there's very little thinking originally. It's just learn how to follow steps. And it doesn't allow you to be nearly as creative, and it doesn't allow you nearly to be as artful when it comes to problem solving. And that is such a key differentiator when it comes to building really, really strong companies and innovative solutions. And that I think is why Tesla is so successful versus everybody else. It's because there's an art to it. There's an art to what they're doing. And if we try to create that repetition for those things and try to like come up with a secret sauce on how to make this repetitive, it's going to kill it, because not everybody thinks the same way. Everyone excels in different environments and different atmospheres and different things that they see with their eyes or they hear. Like it might spring up an idea, or they just need to sit down. I don't know, maybe somebody needs to get high and freaking go home and think about, okay, this is how I'm going to solve this problem today. Like there's so many different people like work in such different ways. And that doesn't get talked about enough. Yeah,
and that ties into the culture topic again, because it's all the culture that nurtures this kind of behavior from the people, for example.
Right.
A free flow of ideas is very important. And if you sit there in an office, if you have a problem with this, you talk with this guy, but don't never the CEO. If you see a CEO and they don't even tell you that, but you feel it. It's like, oh, I better don't stick my head out. And then the inner resignation comes, and then you are gone from your brain.
You're just another piece in the cog.
Yeah, and this is not productive, I would say. And in times where innovation is important, and when you try to innovate, the free flow of ideas, creativity is very important, and iteration is very important, and deciding fast is also very important, because we, as Germans, don't compete with the French or the Polish people. Europe is in competition with the US, is in competition with China, and China are very fast movers. Americans are very fast movers. And then what do? You have to change. That's why I want to also work on culture change as much, because it's such an important topic for Germany. It really needs solutions to get a little bit faster and less stubbornness, like we need that and stuff like that, and fast decisions.
Trust
eventually.
Trust people. Trust people. That's it. Just trust them.
Daimler-Chrysler, you remember that? Daimler-Chrysler? Does that ring a bell? It didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
You know why it didn't work out? Because that was a German-American culture clash that didn't work. Why? Because, for example, the German teams, they talked with the teams there, and hierarchical, they were above them in that scenario. Okay, we do it like this and that, and we just do it like that, the Americans said. And then the next day, the Germans were puzzled. Wait a second. Yesterday, we made a decision. Why are we doing something else today? I don't get it. Yeah, because we have new data. The decision doesn't make sense anymore. We just jump to the next idea and try that. And then the real decision comes at the end of the iteration processes, and then you have your real decision. And in Germany, it's like, no, let's discuss 80% of the time. We discuss every detail in theory, and then we decide. And when we decide, we move. And I get it. It's great for the process to decide and stick with your plan. But it's not agile. And that's a huge problem. And if you don't even understand your customers anymore, because you have to move faster, I mean, from Silicon Valley, there's this principle that you test your ideas before even producing a product. For example, you get an ad. You click on the ad. It goes to a 404 page. This was a click test to test if you are interested in this kind of product. Oh, guess what? The statistics say, oh, people like this product. Let's produce the product. But there is no existing product, but you get an ad for a product that seems to be legit and stuff like that. And stuff like that is happening in marketing, for example. So they are very different in that regard. And I think there are very interesting times ahead with that. And hopefully we can adapt from the Americans more, because I think they are really crushing it, really. In that regard, really. Especially Tesla.
In some respects.
Ford is a different topic, or GM is a different topic, but I mean, like,
in some respects,
in principle, software companies are crushing it. Let's put it this way, maybe, because the legacy car companies have problems with their software as well. So, yeah.
I think what's clear to me is that, let's call it the American way of like fast innovation, iteration, coming up with ideas, a more artful sort of approach to problem solving.
Low context, very important.
Yeah, low context. Yeah, it's great in a situation where an industry is being disrupted or there's a lot of innovation happening. The German way of like high precision process, really approaching everything scientifically, theoretical, is extremely good for a steady state where you need to squeeze out as much profitability as humanly possible.
For operation,
You know what I'm saying? So the German way is incompatible, I would say, in a place where the entire energy and automotive industry is being disrupted to hell.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You cannot be precise because everything changes every day. Something new is going to happen. There's macro forces that are going to change it. There's a saying that comes to mind when I think about everything that we just discussed, like everything. And I forget where I heard this. I've heard it in multiple places, but I forget where I first heard it. Is that a lot of times what happens is that you end up having a situation where only weeks worth of things happen in years. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of years worth of things happen in weeks. And I really think that's what's happening here with the entire auto industry and what we discussed with Tesla and everything else. Is that to me, it feels like for the last few years and maybe going into the next couple of years here, there's all this stuff brewing where it's kind of status quo, but Tesla keeps chipping away. And GM says we'll be the leader in North America with EVs. Where Blume is going to come out and say Volkswagen's going to do amazing. Where Ford is like, yep, we're going to be the best-selling EV automaker in the United States, so on and so forth. And then something's going to happen. The first guy's going to break. GM's going to go bankrupt, or Ford is going to go bankrupt, or Volkswagen is going to have to lay off a ton of people, or something's going to happen. Toyota is going to go bankrupt, and they're going to have to lay off a bunch of people. That first domino is going to fall, and then within weeks, the whole thing's going to freaking come down. And everything's going to get exposed, and all the guts are going to be out there for everybody to see. All the things we've been talking about for the last few years about how this is coming. Somebody else called this the slowest train wreck in history. Like it's happening. It's very obviously, clearly happening, and that I'm scared for this day. There's going to come a day where within 2 to 3 weeks, there's going to be years worth of things that are going to happen in that time frame, and I'm not so sure it's going to be good, because that means a lot of companies are going to be in really, 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 really big trouble. And then you have this overarching macro environment with this war in Russia and Ukraine. There's tensions with China and the US and the West. You got China, India, Russia, South Africa partnering to create their own global currency to try and go against the dollar and the euro. You have all these market forces that are happening from a macro perspective that are underpinning this specific industry undergoing gigantic change. And then when you have all these guts out for everybody to see, somebody's gonna come in and capitalize on that opportunity. Yeah. Who's gonna be that person? Which country is that gonna be? Which group is that gonna be? There's a lot of weakness, and and this is not a pro-Western propaganda, anti-Eastern. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is I'm outlining a thing that's very clearly going to happen, and my question becomes, who's going to take advantage of this situation? And who's going to come out the winner from that perspective? Are enough people thinking about this potential outcome? And are the people that are going to be the key variables that are going to be part of this bloodshed, are they truly looking at this scenario and saying, this is a likely scenario for us, we have to protect ourselves and we have to ensure we don't arrive to this point? Which one of these companies is having this very dire conversation, which in my opinion needs to happen from a leadership perspective? I don't know, man. Like, I've been thinking about that a lot. And I'm not very optimistic right now about some of the outcomes that are going to come out of this, especially with what's going on from a macro perspective. So anyway, I didn't mean to like bring down the mood, but no, I'm concerned. Really, I have concerns.
I have to say, this sums it up so well, what you said. Like, I don't even want to add anything because I think it's perfectly summed up, because you're so right with what you've just said. And I also see that huge changes are happening right now. And we will see that in the next 20 years, especially if you add 10 years even more. I mean, it's crazy what's going to happen. And this industry will be disrupted. The energy crisis maybe just shifted the focus or pushed the timeline maybe 5 years further away with renewables, for example, because we are now reliant on, we have to ramp up coal and everything in Germany, for example, and stuff like that. And but we really know we must get out of this thing. We must get out of this energy problem that we are so reliant on different countries. And this will shock all countries. And they will say, oh, God, we got to localize everything. This is crazy. If something like that happens to us, we are also too reliant on different countries. And I think the renewable sector will have like a huge... After this crisis, that's what I see. I listen to that. Yes, there will be casualties everywhere, but after this will be like a huge flood that just washes everything away, and then we rebuild. I mean, it's shocking. We are in this situation, especially here in Europe, but I totally agree with you. It's interesting what you've said. Yeah.
Who's got all the money? Who's got all the money? Honestly, that becomes that's the winner. Who's got all the money in this situation? They're going to be the ones that are going to be building. And this is why I think Tesla is such a unique case in this. Because boy, are they going to be generating cash here in the next few years.
Especially now, in that times where we have so many disruptions happening right now, especially in the energy sector. We don't need hit pieces. We don't need bad news to sum the episode a little bit up. I want to sum it up now. But yeah, we don't need stuff like that. We need, like Elon Musk said one time, he said, I'm going to butcher this right now, but he said something along the lines of, don't focus on, for example, bringing down the oil industry. We got to bring down the oil. No. Develop products that replace the oil industry. That's right. the key factor we have to focus on the positives. Let's replace the cars. Let's make better software to have something like that. Something along those lines. And I think all these discussions we are having, and we interview a lot of people, you and me, and we talk with many experts on different fields and very interesting people and normal people who just work in the industry, for example, which also have very interesting insights. And what you've just summed up, I think, is the fruit of all these discussions and everything mixed together. And that's your conclusion. And I also feel we are near a conclusion.
Yeah. Me too. Also
in my discussions, I feel like, okay, the culture topic is that, this, and that, and this is connected with that, and connecting all those dots now comes to a thing that we can put that in one sentence one day. So I think we are very near. That's what I wanted to say, and I'm glad we are near because then we have like clarity, and that's very important because we're like explorers and we're walking around interviewing people like you, for example, and just finding the nuggets and putting them together into a gold.
That's a great way of putting it. We're explorers. I like that.
Yeah, and we have people who are interested, and that's why I love this Tesla community as well. I've had an interview with Alexandra Merz, for example, also German. It was very interesting from the culture perspective to discuss this topic and stuff. And Gary Black, for example, is so important for the community also, and everybody who is participating.
Everybody is. Even Tesla Q. Even Tesla Q is important because we need somebody on the other side that tells us why they think this thing is potentially going to fail massively. Now, I wish they had better arguments, but it's important to have those voices, and we should be accepting all of them. Like, let's just, like, everybody talk. Everybody say what you feel. Put data points out there. Let's generate data points. Let's come together and talk about them in a peaceful, respectful manner. But let's use that to really see how the world could potentially play out, so that we can all try to be part of a solution. So that we can all try to move this towards the right place, towards the correct place that we think is the correct place, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So and it's fun, and it's also fun. It's fun to just sit down and talk about this. You know?
Yeah, it's so important, and for me as a communications designer, I'm so glad for this technology that we can talk to Texas from Germany, and I always say that it's so crazy. If you think about 20 years ago, it was so different. You can't even imagine how disruptive this internet technology was, and the development of the iPhone, how important that was for pushing the technology forward. And social media was the next revolution that came, and it's so hot. Like the topics are so hot and fast, and we have companies that struggle with the digitalization of everything and stuff like that, for example, the legacy auto and stuff like that. But we're gonna get to the bottom of everything, and maybe we can like formulate a thesis one day, and with that thesis we can go and just discuss with Tesla Q, for example, more with the different angles, and be very respectful with one another in the discussion.
Just don't be too German about it. Don't be too German about it. Let the art come out.
Yeah.
There is disruption happening, so.
Yeah.
But
all right, so FARZAD, we have to end the episode, or we talk until tomorrow. So and I have to edit all of this.
Thank you so much, man.
And thank you very much for being on the podcast again. And I really love the community. I love you, FARZAD. Thank you for
love
being
you too,
here.
Man. Thank you.
And maybe there's just one thing to say now to everybody. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. Awesome. That was great.